Welcome to the Pole Shift News and the maverickstar Observatory. Guys, I won't beat around the bush in this upload. I'll just come out clean and tell you what the purpose of this video is. There is some interesting stuff that we will discuss later on this video, and I think you will find it of great interest, but the purpose is to try and recover the deficit of last month on this month. We're about £500 less of what we made last month towards the maverickstar Observatory, and keeping things running. So, I wanted to share with you guys a little bit later on in this upload the conversation I had with my 14-year-old son on the way to school this morning, and you'll probably find that unique and interesting if you just stay around a little bit longer. But you know what, the purpose, like I say, is to try and recuperate what we've been doing on average for the last 3 months or thereabouts. And I wanted to just explain what we do on poleshiftnews.com and the maverickstar Observatory. So let's get into that. Let's see what we do on the, first of all, the Pole Shift News, what we cover on this website. So to kick off, we've got magnetometer data from other observatories around the world, and then we have live solar data, lots of information there, X-rays, protons, KP index, we've got the deabsorption regions, we can see what's going on with regards to our solar system and the flares coming off the suns. Then we've got the aurora data, and then we've got lots of charts just backing up the grand solar minimum, as you can see. Then we have live cosmic ray data from the Bratensburg neutron monitor, and also the apathy neutron monitor. We got the variations of gamma ray background in the last 24 hours, the charged particles last 30 days, and so on. Then we have the daily erupting volcanoes. We don't concentrate so much on the active volcanoes because that covers a bit of a spectrum, that does. What we're actually interested in here is just looking at the ones that are actually in eruption. I think, if you're going to draw a comparison with some data, then I think, with regards to volcanoes, it's a good idea just to concentrate the ones that are actually erupting, as opposed to those that are just rumbling and showing signs of activity. And that's why when we look at this chart and compare it to probably 12 months ago, we can see that there is less today in actual eruption than what there was 12 months ago, as I've pointed out in recent videos. Then we have the live earthquake maps. All you have to do is type in the magnitude of earthquake that you're interested in and over what time period, press select, and it will take you to the data that you're interested in with regards to earthquakes. We also cover the sea ice extent and concentration, and if you scroll up you can see the concentration maps for yourself, as well as global weather maps. All this information is updated daily. We've got satellite, radar, and if we scroll down a little bit further, we've got temperature maps across the globe, and then we've got total precipitation of water where it's raining, and then we've got the daily sea surface temperature of the oceans as well, all again updated daily. Then we cover solar wind with regards to space weather. As you can see, we've got solar wind, planetary KP index, Van Allen Probus radiation belt charts. We've got total electron content forecasts, and again, X-ray flux, solar proton flux, and geomagnetic activity maps. All this is updated every day, and sometimes more than one time a day, guys. Then we have the Schumann resonance, and some people feel attuned to this. This is built or arrived from the actual lightning strikes per second given all around the world. And I remember reading an article about the astronauts on the Apollo missions that actually had the Schumann resonance being played in the capsule, because they feared that, you know, as a result of not receiving that resonance frequency, that it might have psychological effects on the astronauts during that mission to the moon and back. So it's very interesting. And, you know, I hear people talk about the fact that sometimes when the Schumann resonance changes, their mood changes. So maybe there might be something more that we don't realise about the Schumann resonance. And, you know, it's just another thing that we cover here on the Pole Shift News. And then, guys, we have the Learning Centre. And there's some good information here. It's brief, but, you know, to the point. Explains how we know the Earth is going through a magnetic reversal, what are the implications. We've added some information with regards to the magnetosphere, and as you can see the diagram where it shows you the plasma sheet, you know, and the various components of the magnetic field that we talk about. In generally, when we just discuss the fact that we're talking about the magnetosphere, there's a lot of components within that we're actually, you know, talking about, but we don't always mention them because we're trying to keep it simple for the layman so that everybody gets a general understanding of what to look out for. But I will say this, it's worth having a look at some of these videos, and more to the point, this one here, Nova Magnetic Pole Flip, 530,000 years overdue and happening now, because they spell out really the implications which we all face right now during this magnetic reversal. So, you know, there is along that some information with regards to the grand solar minimum, which you might find interesting, like this one from NASA, where they tell you where the sunspots are in relationship to the actual solar cycle, and various other things. You know, guys, what we've tried to do is capture as much information as we possibly could to inform you. And like I say, the Learning Centre is a good place to start with if you're not particularly up to date with, you know, what our main topic is here on poleshiftnews.com. And that takes us now to the point of what we do with the Maverickstar Observatory, because we don't all just cover all those and other anomalies that are taking place on our Earth. We're actually focusing on one particular anomaly, and that is because it is the rarest anomaly of all, because earthquakes happen on a daily basis around our Earth. Volcanic activity is always going on. You know, we're getting floods more often now, we're getting hurricanes, we do get tsunamis and things like that, but we don't get a magnetic reversal every day. We don't get them every week, we don't get them every month or every year, we don't get them every 10,000 years. We might get excursions every 12 to 14,000 years, but they're not completed magnetic reversals, and we don't get completed magnetic reversals every 300,000 years. They usually occur every 300 to 400,000 years, and the last one was 780,000 years. So something definitely has changed with regards to our planet, and that's why we cover the pole reversal, because it is the rarest anomaly that is taking place. And you can get information on all those other anomalies that is taking place on our Earth, but you try and get information and, you know, above level 2 information from the European Space Agency, you're going to find it very difficult to do that. There's a reason for that. It's because on planetary mechanics scales, pole shifts are pretty unique, probably life sustaining. If we compare what happened with Mars when it lost its magnetic poles, it also lost its magnetosphere, it also lost its atmosphere, it also lost its water on its surface. So that's why it's important to us to cover this topic, and that's what we do, not just on poleshiftnews.com, but on the Maverickstar Observatory. And that's why we go a little bit further than all the other YouTube channels, all the other websites that cover this topic, because we don't just top off on covering, you know, all the other anomalies. We actually focus on the most important anomaly, is to be, you know, recognised by mainstream, because the magnetic poles are the major planetary mechanic aspects of supporting life, and that's why we cover it on this channel. And let's just have a look at what we do with regards to covering that. Now, you guys have seen this map many times, and most of you don't probably need to be explained what is on there with regards to M1, M2, M3, M4, M5, M6 and the Trimag, but I'll just put it in perspective. You know, there are more Ferraris, Lamborghinis, £50 million yachts than there are these magnetometers. These magnetometers, as you can see, that have gone around the world, there is only 6 of. They're unique, bespoke, and yeah, they are prototypes, but they do the job, guys. They collect the data, and you know, it gets sent back to the UK here, where we home the Trimag system and the magnetosphere sensor. We process that data and we get it back up on the internet so that you guys can see what's going on with the high intensity magnetic regions over this planet. Let's put it in perspective. NASA's not sharing this information with you. The European Space Agency aren't sharing the same data with you, but here on the Maverickstar Observatory, on the Pole Shift News website, we do. We share it with you guys. What we collect, we share exactly what we get with you guys. That's a rarity in itself. The Trimag records the heading of the magnetic North Pole every 3 seconds, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and we have magnetometers in Southern California and Kentucky and India now, and Hong Kong, Perth, Australia, and the Gold Coast, that record data every 15 minutes. And when that data gets sent back here to the UK, we process the data, we chart it, we put it up on the website, and if there's anything to talk about with regards to that data, we tell you guys firsthand. Guys, up until 6 months ago, I used to say on this website, you know, when I was doing YouTube videos, I used to say we a lot, but really we only came into effect 6 months ago, and that was when we started to get these other magnetometers around the world, because up until that point this has been a one-man band. You know, as you know, I've been the programmer of these devices, the designer of these devices, you know, the electronics engineer of these devices, the scientist, this, that and the other. But we only came into effect 6 months ago. M1 doesn't really represent M1, it represents JD in South California. M2 represents Brad in Kentucky, who's been a long time friend and supporter of everything we've done on this channel. M3 is recently Ricky in India, and M4 is Tony, the pilot in Hong Kong. And then we've got M5 in Perth, Jeff, and Richard, M6 in the Gold Coast, Australia. So, you know, guys, it is really now we to do effort. You know, over here in the UK, it's me, Gene, you know, running the Trimag and the magnetosphere sensor. But all these people have contributed their time and efforts and money as well, guys, because some of these guys have actually took it upon themselves to integrate, you know, backup power supply systems, so if anything happens, like the electric gets cut out, especially like Ricky was talking about, you know, he's going to put this magnetometer in his farm, which isn't really being used at the moment as far as I know, but he's going to make sure that the data gets to us, and if there is interruptions, and India has suffered with regular intervals during the summer where there's lots of power outages, so he's going to put it upon himself to, you know, back it up with battery power supply, so if anything happens. I believe Jeff has done the same in Perth, Australia as well. You know, they are committed to delivering the data to you guys as much as I am, you know, and it really is a we contribution now, as opposed to just myself, which is amazing. You know, we've taken this a lot further than just talking about it. And you won't find another channel on YouTube, you won't find another website, and people sometimes send me links to these things, and sometimes, you know, when I explore the links, it's to something that iPhones do with their magnetometers, and they collect the data worldwide on thousands of iPhones, and it's really when you look at it deeply, you know, it's unreliable. You can't trust the data, because at the end of the day, you know, these iPhones are being carried around with us. We're coming into contact with cars, big chunks of metal, you know, magnetism, you know, and a lot of other things, and it just corrupts the data. If you want real, true data, you build a device like what I have, and you get it sent out to the locations where we have, and you know, you record the background the background magnetism, or you know, the intensity of that region, as we do here, and you know, you chart it and you put it up on the website for people to see. You know, you might get some incidences where there are some uncertainties in the data, but trust me, when you're recording data every 15-minute intervals, you know, it's hard for every 15 minutes to be corrupted by uncertainties. So, you know, we can filter out all those spikes that we might get, you know, where the magnetometer has recently come into contact with, you know, something that's affected the reading. We can iron out all those creases, and we can see the majority of the data that we collect. We can filter out those little uncertainties, and we can focus on actually what is the case. And it's that what is the case that's not being relayed to us all. And that's what we dedicate ourselves to here now on the Maverickstar Observatory. And it is an observatory, an official observatory that collects data 24 hours a day all around the world, and relays that information back to you on the most important topic that could be, if you was really, really interested in what was going on with your planet today. That's what we do here at the observatory, and that's why I think it's worth just mentioning what I have, what we cover on the Pole Shift News and the Maverickstar Observatory, you know, in order to try and raise, you know, just a small amount of money just to keep things going the way they are. I mean, we've got now, like I say, a £500 deficit. For the last 3 months, we've made, you know, the same amount of money on the website, and this time it's looking like we're going to be £500 short on the month. You know, when you're doing more than what you possibly can, you know, you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you work, and you come home and you work again, and you know, you get less for it. It's disheartening, guys, it really is. And we've got 23,000, over 23,000, nearly 23,500 subscribers. You know, I just don't know what's going on. I do remember a story, and I'll share it with you. So I'll begin with the story, but before I do, you know, I have been this guy in the suit walking past what you can see in this photo many times, and it was quite funny the one day. I'd went in the shop next to, you know, a similar operation as what you can see there, someone sleeping on the floor with their quilts and their belongings, and I brought myself some pastries, sausage rolls and things like that. If you're familiar with what those are, it's like a sausage meat and some pastry in here. But you know, I was feeling a bit hungry, and when I come out, I looked at this, I thought, you know what, I just can't eat it. You know, I've got to, you know, I saw the guy was asleep. I shook him. I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, it's a sausage roll there for you." He said, "I'm a vegetarian." I was like, okay. So you know, I reached into my pocket and gave him a £5. I mean, you know, we just sometimes don't think, do we? And you know, like I've said, passed this many times, and I think it's a crying shame. But this is becoming more frequently. If you live next to a city or a town centre, or you're in a village, town, or something like that, you're going to see this, guys. And I think you guys can, relate to what I'm talking about. Why is this happening in our day and time? And with that, I'll go on with this story because I don't want to keep you guys all day long. And it reminds me of a story. I can't quite remember where I heard about this, but I think the moral of the story is significant. And it starts like this. There are 3 people that have found themselves in unfortunate situations where they are on the streets living, and surviving. And they come together, meet each other in a park, and they say to each other, what, we're starving, all of us. Perhaps if we all pull together, we can, manage to get ourselves something to eat. And the one says, well, you know what, I've got a small gas stove and some water. And the other one says, I've got some meat, which I don't know where he scavenged it from, but he did. And the other one says, I've got some vegetables. And they all agree that if they put all these things together, they can have a hearty stew meal. And what they do is they take it in turns to put their bit into the saucepan that's boiling. And the one thinks to himself, you know what, I'm going to pretend to put my meat in this saucepan, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to enjoy some vegetables that are going to be stewed in this water in any case. And the other one thinks to himself, I'm not going to put my vegetables in this water because there's going to be meat in there, and that's going to taste a little bit like a stew of some sorts, or a soup of some sorts. So he doesn't put his vegetables in there. And when it comes down to it, they all sit round and they're about to eat. All is they get poured into their pot is just warm water. And, that's sort of like a moral of, if we don't work together, that's what you get. If we all work together, you get something out of it. I think it's a powerful moral. And, guys, I think, just because we're not all at the level of what some of these unfortunate people are, doesn't mean that we cannot be there at some point. You have to remember this, that there are the majority, probably 85% of the people in this world today that are one paycheck away from being in that situation. Because how fast things can categorically get out of condition. If you don't meet the mortgage, the house goes up for repossession. If you find yourself out of home and you lose your job because you never met that mortgage payment, you can be out on the street very quickly. And these people are human beings at the end of the day. Some of these people had big jobs, and we're all guilty of it at the end of the day, guys. We all live to our means, don't we? We earn 15 grand a year. We live to the limit of the 15,000. If we earn 30,000 a year, we live to the limit of 30,000 pound a year. And you know what? It's no different to these millionaires, and they're just as vulnerable as us. They can lose, a great deal of wealth in the blink of an eye, just like us. And if you look at the stock market crashes and the suicide rates during those times of these people that was trading at that time, that just brings it home to us. At the end of the day, we have to work together as a species to ensure that these things don't happen. We're at a funny time. Okay, I said at the beginning of this video, and I've left it to this minute, and I'll be honest with you guys, what, I forgot all about it. I said what I was going to talk about is what the conversation I was having with my son, who's 14 years old, on the way to school. So I'll just tell you briefly what that was about. It was talking about the pyramids, and it's a massive structure and this, that and the other. And I explained to him, I said, listen, these people that built these monuments many years ago all had one thing in common, and for some reason we was also talking about what it said in the Bible with regards to in Revelations, with what is described as, quote, the bride that descends from the heaven. There are other chapters in the Bible that talks about Ezekiel seeing wheels within wheels descend from the heaven, and describing beings that had probably what I would say mask on, that had the bull face, the human face, and the other faces as well. But there is something that is common in our history that reflects throughout different civilizations. The Sumerians believed that we had contact with people from the heavens. They descended from the heavens to earth and had great and vast technologies. There are carvings in the Egyptian culture that show probably vehicles that we would recognise today that shouldn't have been understood back in them days. And I also said, if we take on board what we have done at the highest technological advancement today, and I used the Burj Khalifa, I think it is, in Dubai as an example, and I said to him, my son, I said, this has been built out of concrete, and it takes 100 years for concrete to mature to its hardest form, and then 100 years it will gradually deteriorate over that period of time. And this is probably one of the most brilliant examples of our architecture in this day. And it isn't going to last 200 years from this day. When you compare that with the stone monuments such as Etli Tebetli, is it, which has recently been mainly talked about, some of the Inca architecture that has lasted for thousands of years. And then we go more towards the UK, let's say the Stonehenge monument, over 6,000 years, and then we go straight over to Egypt and their monument that they built, well over 6,000 years old. And just think about it. It's coming to our knowledge now that not only were these buildings erected over this period of time of 6,000 years, but they've actually still stood the test of time. They're still in the form almost of which was when they was built. The Burj Khalifa won't be here in 200 years time, neither will any other concrete structure that we've got around today. They're all going to fail because of the components that they were made out of, and that these civilizations that built these things knew how to build things to last the test of time. So I was saying to my son, we are a bit of a wasteful civilization, and when we do disappear from this earth, we're probably not going to be recognised for anything. Our technology is going to decay and dissolve in the natural elements. You throw an iPhone out in the rain and forget about it for 10 years, and most of that fine circuitry is not going to exist because it's going to have corroded. The phone will not work simply in 100 years time. Some of us are finding that these phones don't work after 4 years time, so that just puts it in perspective, doesn't it? That they malfunction or something. We need to keep producing stuff. We're going to be considered, I think, or remembered only for the fact that we wasted so much of our resources and time, and we actually built nothing that lasted the test of time. We're consuming everything on this planet. I do wonder whether we have never been so much in abundance, human beings on this planet, as we are today. So there we are in a nutshell. I could go on about these things, guys, but in general, I was just saying to my son, we seem to have had contact and knowledge of beings from other worlds. It's recorded not only in our carvings that we see in Egypt, the Sumerian tablets talking about the Nephilim, is it the Anunnaki, sorry, the Nephilim is mentioned in the Bible, isn't it? The giants. And we can only ask the question as why and how did they manage to build such intricate equipment as the pyramids, or architecture as the pyramids, and how did they manage to do it? It just begs the question, doesn't it? Guys, I'm going to leave it here. That's just in a nutshell what I was discussing with my son this morning on the way to taking him to school. And we see this, what we're looking at here, on a daily basis, and it's a bit of a shame that we let each other go and down like we do. And I think the moral is, we need to all stand together and support each other. And I think on that note, I'm going to just say, guys, you know what, we're well behind what we was last month on keeping the observatory going, and we need to maintain at least the minimum amount that keeps it going. And there is a link down there, and we've lost patrons as well. I don't know what we're doing wrong. I really don't. When we're delivering as much as we are and we're losing, how can that be right? How can it be right when you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you set it yourself the task of producing more, delivering more, working harder, and getting paid less? But I think you guys can relate to this, can't you? This is a common occurrence in this day and age, but it shouldn't be that way, should it? So I'm going to mention the link down there anyhow, guys. There's the Patreon link and there's the PayPal link. And I'll catch up with you at some point in the week. I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.